But he was a fucking beast.
And it's a dangerous precedent because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law.
Is dead.
But the High Court's decision does allow Special Counsel Jack Smith to prosecute Trump for private acts, and deciding what those are now falls to Judge Tanya Chutkan, who is overseeing the federal election interference case.
This is not the end of the prosecution of Donald Trump. I strongly suspect that Jack Smith will find allegations that he thinks survive, and Judge Chutkan, more importantly, will find allegations that she thinks survive.
Now, last night, Trump's legal team did send a letter.
Yeah, it's great. Now they can appeal it again on the basis of whether or not this is an official presidential act or not, or a simply private matter, and take that all the way up to the Supreme Court, which they openly said they would take on, by the way. Like, they literally were like, yeah, if you want to have us decide on what is presidential and what's a private matter, we can do that too. We're not going to do that now, but we can do that in the future, which is great. That's cool.
Citing the decision and asking the judge in his New York hush money trial to overturn his criminal conviction. That is a stretch, to say the least. It seems perhaps more an effort to delay his sentencing, which is now set for July 11th. Tony?
Jan, got it very much. Thank you very much.
The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking of the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence. I think it's fair to say it's one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not.
I mean, this is a good speech overall. I just can't get over his fucking fake Trump-style orange tan. I can't get over that. I can't get over the fact that he's just got this biggest gift, dude. Start murking political opponents, big dog. What are we doing here? Put him in jail. Illegally. As an official presidential act, if you truly believe that Donald Trump represents this genuine fascist threat to American democracy, it is well within your purview to do an official presidential act, okay, and you know, deal with it. It is within your official presidential act. It is as an official presidential act. You should conspire to deal with the U.S. Supreme Court justices, for example. Officially speaking, officially and presidentially. Just saying.
People have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, to define the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute, and that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it'll depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency. Because the law will no longer do it.
No, it's like, yeah, the law fucked up, which is why it's up to the voters to make sure that someone of high moral character becomes president so they don't abuse it. Sure would suck if somebody would abuse that. And it's like, dude, come on. Trump was president, man. Trump was fucking president. Americans don't give a shit about a crook and a con man.
Do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years. But any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent.
Yeah. Dissent.
And God bless you all.
By fucking voting. Dissent by voting. Vote, please.
All, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. And may God protect our troops.
Why would the best Democrats beat Trump?
Anyway. All right, let's hear what the analysis
For more on this,
is.
let's go to our chief political analyst, John Dickerson, and CBS News legal analyst, Ricky Kleeman. Good morning.
Bro, I'm so fucking thirsty, and I'm just eyeballing that. I'm just eyeballing that bottle full of tap water, and I'm like, I don't know if I should have it. I don't know if I should have that shit. But I fucking want it, dude. I might just drink this stuff in the kettle.
Morning to both of you. We're going to talk to you, John, in a moment about the presidency and what this means. But first, the legal cases that Trump is facing. What now, Ricky?
Well, Jan just mentioned New York. Looking to stop the conviction, to overturn it and not be sentenced is ridiculous. So let's look at the January 6th case. The January 6th case is the case that went up to the Supreme Court. What is going to happen here is a matter of procedure. It is going to get kicked back down to the district court. That's Judge Tanya Chutkan. Judge Chutkan is going to have a hearing on every act that is in this indictment. Keep in mind, this indictment is 45 pages. It has 128 paragraphs in it. And of them, 123 are acts. So what Judge Chutkan is going to do is go one by one after they brief the issue for her and hear arguments, and she's going to make a decision and say, well, this act is
Some of
not
the cleanest water.
official.
I'm on the islands, dude. I'm not in Dubrovnik. I'm not in fucking mainland Croatia. I'm on a fucking random ass island, so I don't know if it's like. That's the difference. I wouldn't give a shit about it.
This act is private. And there, I will say, I think without fear of contradiction, understanding Judge Chutkan, who is prompt, who is precise, who is smart, and found that there was absolutely no immunity, that about 95% of this case, she is going to say is ready for trial.
That 5% is a big deal, right? So a key part of the interference allegations, and I think a disturbing aspect of the Supreme Court ruling for a lot of people, is that Donald Trump's efforts to pressure his vice president not to certify the election will be an official act and therefore not prosecutable.
No, wrong. It's
No?
the Justice Department conversations. They are definitely not prosecutable. The question of the conversations with Mike Pence to stop the certification, they may be presumptively official, but I would still think Judge Chutkan will find that the government can overcome the presumption, and they're going forward. What's the problem here is delay, because they're all going to be appealed.
John, can you put this in perspective about what it means historically? Because many people are sitting here thinking the guardrails have now come off. What does this mean?
So we have to separate it
picture.
in a few different ways. There's the office of the presidency, forget who's in the office. There have been debates about the power of the president and the executive and what kinds of powers the executive needs to act with dispatch. Those arguments were going on pretty much right after they finished the Constitution 234 years ago in that hot summer in Philadelphia. In that regard, this basically gives more power to the presidency, but that's a kind of an abstract debate about the presidency. What does it mean with respect to Donald Trump? Well, it means what Ricky was just talking about. There are specific ways in which it'll affect this case about his participation in January 6th. But then there's the third part, which is the biofeedback. How is he going to receive this news? And if he is to be elected again, how's he going to operationalize it? We've seen him already claim that this gets him out of the New York case, which is a stretch and a ridiculous reading of the Supreme Court. But if he's president, he's likely to read this ruling as a kind of all guardrails are off. And why do we think that? Three reasons. One, we have the testimony of his former officials who said much of our time was spent telling him you can't do that, it's illegal. He's likely to think, you know what, I know how to get around this. The second thing is when presidents are given power, they rarely say, you know what, I'm not going to use it. And the third thing is, if you believe in politics, that if you have the power, you can do what you want, well, he's likely, and those who support him are likely to read this.
Is this streamer a liberal? Absolutely not, brother. How dare you? My God, King Donald Trump, I love him, and I love you if you love Trump. If you hate him, then fuck you.
Ruling as saying,
MAGA.
if you have the power and it's part of your job,
baby.
then go ahead and do what you want.
But John, he has said this
You
even
think some pussy-ass libtard would go to the gym and work out and eat protein? You know that shit's illegal. Okay? Clearly, I'm not some goddamn libtard, brother. That's right. Fuck out of here. They don't actually say MAGA? Wait, why not? Okay, here, I got it. I want to fucking suck Joe Brandon. Yum. His cummies. I see them t-shirts all the time. People are saying, I want to have sex with Joe Biden. That's what they're saying on them t-shirts. Me too, brother. Me too. I want to fuck him. Hell yeah. Fuck Joe Brandon. I want to have sexual intercourse with Joseph Robinette Brandon. Yeah. MAGA.
before the ruling. So how should that he has the power, how should voters process this?
They should, and I'll go back to what I've been talking about for years, they should think of this as an office that requires the occupant to have a certain level of character. Because when you're given extreme power, it comes down to you and your character and whether you will use that power wisely and in a restrained fashion in the job. And that goes to not just these questions that are a part of this ruling, but more broadly in the job. Character means two things. One, do you care about people other than your base? Because you're president of the whole country. And what that means is, are you going to do things that are going to help the most number of people? And the second part of character means, do you recognize there are long-term consequences for your behavior? It's not just what's going to help you and what's going to help you in the short term, but that you are in a job that requires that you think about the future. And putting character back in focus on the job is a good thing for an election, and it's what everybody should be talking about.
Yeah, well, given the ruling, the convictions, the upcoming election, this is very layered. Thank you for breaking it up.
Yeah, it's super layered. All right, listen. Chat, it's been 5 hours, okay? I'm tired as fuck. It's actually 12 over here, 12 a.m. I love you all. I wanted to give you guys some hot, juicy 5 hours of political commentary. Tomorrow there is a